Hey y'all, it's KimBoo, and I am recording this as episode 56 of the Author Alchemist podcast, taking a break in the middle of all my preparations for Author Nation 2025, which as I record this is about a week and a half away. I will be presenting on November 6th of 2025, obviously, and I will be presenting on serials. It's based on my book, Become an Unstoppable Storyteller, about structuring long-running serials. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. I've been talking about serials since, 2023, when I originally was asked about them, when and people started like tracking me down, and I started appearing on podcasts and doing webinars, and so I wrote the book, and now I'm presenting at Author Nation. As I was talking to my friend Vicky last night over pizza and a beer, that it's funny how these things that kind of build on themselves. It's if I hadn't had written that book back in 2023, if I hadn't spent all the time since then promoting myself to get on podcasts and get my name out there and talk to people about the topic and make myself the expert, which I am, at least one of the experts out there. There's more than one. Then I wouldn't have been accepted to present at this big conference. So this is kind of a dream come true. As I've mentioned before, and as I mentioned in my blog, the York Horde comes out every week on my blog, The Scriptorium. Link to that in what does John say? The doobly-doo, John Hank. Doobly-doo. So if you want to sign up for that and get weekly updates, semi-weekly updates, whenever I have updates to give, then do that. In the York Horde, I include updates about what I'm writing, what I'm working on, even my fan fiction updates, serial updates, just everything that's happening, plus usually a pretty photo of what's going on around town. Right now I've got some great Halloween photos from the area because I live in a very residential, kind of like I'm like 2 miles north of downtown, so it's still pretty residential because Tallahassee is a small town. So there's some great photos there. Not of my dog. Unfortunately, we still miss Keely. What am I talking about today after that long intro? Today I'm talking about my other book, which I actually pulled out of. It's like Out From Fanfic. Can you see it there? Woo! I know that this is a niche topic, and the idea of switching, or I would rather say expanding your writing potential from writing fan fiction to writing original fiction is not something, everybody wants to do, because not everybody writes fan fiction, as popular as it is. I really hope, though, that I can translate some of the lessons there outside of that small group, which is why I want to talk about it today on this podcast. The idea that you have to open a vein and start bleeding on the paper as you're typing is an old one. And I think it references the idea that we have to put everything we have into our writing. And one of the reasons that we do that is because the blank page is so scary. You have to confront that blank page and put something there. The problem with that is that the blank page is endless, right? It goes on forever. There's endless blank pages in front of you. The opportunities and the choices you have to make never end. And when I was doing my research on this particular book for fan fiction writers, one of the reasons I discovered that fan fiction authors can often be so prolific in their writing is not because they are dancing around the fields of options, but because they have guardrails up. It isn't an infinity of choices. They are dealing with specific characters. They are dealing with specific settings, sometimes with specific plots. And I'm specific. That's become a weird sounding word to me now. The point being that if you have all those choices to make, it becomes exhausting. And so the problem is actually decision fatigue. And you don't think it's decision fatigue. You think, oh gosh, I have all these choices to make and writing is so hard. writing is hard, but you're making it harder because you're making all of these decisions as you go along. There's no problem with that. And you don't necessarily, and no, real quick, I got to say, I'm not saying that you have to be a plotter. I'm not saying you have to be an outliner or plan everything out ahead of time. What I am saying is that if you put some guardrails in place before you go in, then those choices take less energy and you have more energy to bleed on the page. Boy, that's a gruesome analogy. I don't like that at all. Let's think of another one. You have more energy to put your creativity on the page. Okay, maybe I can see why some people use blood, but for me, then no, it's creativity. It's a wonderful thing, full of life, and it's amazing. So let's think about putting that on the page, right? Decision fatigue can wear you down in a lot of different ways. This is one reason why some authors, especially the authors I know in genre fiction and especially in romance fiction, tend to fan cast. They think of the actor they would love to play that role. They think of how she moves, how she wears her hair, how she portrayed a certain character. Same for the male lead, how he looks smolderingly at the leading lady. And they have these figures in mind. Now, so not everybody's visual writer, but they still have these fan casts set up so that they can kind of direct their creativity within the guidelines of the characters that they are envisioning. And the same is true for settings. Like, when I do admit that because of my love of Star Trek, a lot of times when I'm thinking of writing a scene on a starship, the first place I go to is the USS Enterprise. I don't stay there. I'm not writing fan fiction about the USS Enterprise, but that's kind of where my launching point, I'm like, oh, okay, so, they're doing this and they're doing that, and this is how the ship is set up. And it just kind of gives me a comfortable framework so that I'm not building things from the ground up. Which isn't to say I don't enjoy building things from the ground up, because I love world building. Dragon's Grail, my ongoing fantasy serial, starring Astra, the middle-aged religious librarian who's been thrown into chaos in her life. I love the world building. I do. I love the religion that I'm building around it, the people she's encountering, the world that she's moving through, the dragons and the magic. It's so much fun. But it takes a lot of energy. So what I like to do is do a little bit of front loading on the world building, which everybody always tells you is a terrible idea. And in fact, in the book, I talk about how if you are a pantser, one of the ways to get around not needing to do an outline in order to build these kind of guardrails and reduce your decision fatigue is to do the world building in advance. Now, don't spend 10 years doing the world building without doing the writing, but if you have a few important pieces of information, such as if your character is a wizard or a witch, building out the magic system ahead of time kind of helps you determine what happens to the characters, how they'll react to situations. Same is true for the map and the layout. I love creating maps. I'm not a cartographer. I enjoy maps. And I have a subscription to Incarnate, which not sponsored or anything like that. So I just use them. There's other options out there. I really like using that because it gives me I'm very visual. So it gives me a visual framework of where they're going and how they get there and how far away things are. These guardrails allow me to focus on the characters and the plot and the story, because I know what the Hashikwazu River looks like and how long it runs, right? And that's a river in Dragon's Grail that my characters are currently stuck on for Joy's writing. But I don't have to think about it too much as I'm writing it, because that's already been put out. It's already been defined for me by me. Like, I'm the one who defined it. I'm not, as opposed to fan fiction where somebody else defines those things. And I mean, that's sometimes why people say that fan fiction's easier to write. And to a certain extent it is in some situations, but also it does make it a little bit more challenging, because how can you take an old story that's been told thousands of times by that point, especially in the more popular fandoms, and tell it in a fresh and unique and interesting way, or even just a bizarre and weird kind of a way. So no, I'm not thinking fan fiction is easier, but the reason people perceive it as easier is because it has those guardrails, it has those definitions, the settings, the characters, the world building, all of that already set up, so that you, as the writer, can just get in there and do the fun part. Just get in there and mess everything up. With your own characters, if you're so busy worrying about what color your character's eyes are, how tall she is, or what her background is, that you're spending all your time trying to figure that out as you go, one, you're going to end up doing a lot of info dumping. And two, you're not going to do the fun part, which is the writing of the story. So I do recommend setting up these kinds of guardrails. If you're a plotter or an outliner, of course, this is going to be more familiar for you because you're going to be able to sit down and create all of those guardrails and just jump in there and start writing, because filling in those points in between the episodes or the scenes is your joy. For those of us who are pantsers and discovery writers, it requires a little bit more effort in that setting up those guardrails might take time away for a moment or two. But once you have it set, once you have those guardrails in place, once you know what your characters look like, once you know some of this stuff, you don't have to know everything. There's a lot about Astra in Dragon's Grail that even I don't know yet, but I know the basics of what I need to tell the next part of the story. And so that guardrail, even though I don't have it plotted out, because I am a discovery writer, even though I don't have it plotted out, I know the parameters of what I can push against. Like, Astra isn't going to suddenly take flight like Superman. It's just not something she's going to do. It might be cool, but no, I mean, we've got dragons. Maybe she'll fly a dragon down the road at some point. The dragons in this story aren't exactly built for riding. They're very independent creatures, but you never know. But she herself, that's not the form of magic she has, and that's not a very common form of magic in the world that she's in. So that guardrail puts that limitation, that parameter, as I call them in the book, so that you can figure out how you want to write the story. Now, what I recommend in the book, I have a lot of exercises in there, and if you haven't written fan fiction, you still might want to check it out, because some of the exercises in there teach you how to take things that you love, tropes you love, types of characters that you are always attracted to as a reader, as a watcher, as a writer, and define them more clearly so that you can use those over and over again and build structures around the things that already interest you and already pull you into a story and help motivate you to write them. Okay, that's enough rambling for me today. I still have my coffee, even though it's like mid-afternoon at this point. So I'm going to eat my Boston mug from Aunt Sheila. I will be working on my presentation for Author Nation. I will be posting the third arc for Dragon's Grail on Biblioteca, which is my fiction blog, soon, hopefully by next week, before I head to Las Vegas for the conference. And I've got a couple of more things in the hoppers, and I will be telling you all about that as it comes up. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for tuning in to the Author Alchemist. I do have a lot more things coming up, and 2026 is going to be an exciting year for me. I feel a lot of things are starting to come together. I'm redoing my Shopify site, so I'll have some great new merch and fun stuff for you guys. I'll let everybody know once that's live. I'm working on it right now. It's a lot of work. So I have a lot to do. I gotta go. Bye, y'all. Thanks for tuning in.